My name is Nora Elridge, I'm 26 years old, and this is the real story of how the people I trusted most of my family dug my heart into the dirt and planted betrayal so deep. I didn't even see it bloom until it was too late. My sister and my fiancé. Secret they kept buried beneath our mother's garden. This is not just a love triangle. It's a poison that started with love and ended in silence. Subscribe, like, and share this story if you believe family isn't always what it seems. This story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries 3 years ago. I lived in a farmhouse at the edge of Lorne Hill, a sleepy New Hampshire town where time moved slower and gossip traveled faster than wind. My parents left me the estate after they passed in a car crash. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine, peaceful, green, full of life, and I filled it with love. His name was Julian Kale, a writer. Mysterious, quiet, wildly handsome. In a timeless way, he came into my life through a bookstore event in town asking about a rare edition of a Sylvia Plath collection. I never believed in love at first sight until him. Within a year we were engaged and the world felt safe until Eloise came back, my older sister, the kind of woman who walks in like a hurricane dressed in silk. She'd been living abroad, art shows, lovers, wine, and hadn't been home since the funeral. I was surprised when she returned. She said she missed us. Miss Mesh smiled when she saw the ring on my finger, but it never reached her eyes at first. I thought I was being paranoid. She praised Julian, spent long hours talking to him about literature, art, Paris. He seemed to enjoy her company too much. I brushed it off. Eloise had always been magnetic, and Julian was kind, not flirty. Then the garden started to change. My mother's garden. It had always been my place of peace, flowers blooming in rows she designed herself. I'd sit on the porch and sip tea, watching petals sway in the breeze, imagining she was still with me somehow. But one morning I found roses planted where there were never supposed to be any red ones. Mom hated red roses, she used to say. They're lovely but false, too much drama for a quiet garden. I asked Eloise. She shrugged. They just showed up, she said. Maybe Julian? I asked him. He said, maybe Eloise? And something inside me shifted. The unease grew faster than the flowers. Eloise started staying out late, coming home smelling like cigarettes and cinnamon. Julian began to write less, talk less, touch less. I caught them laughing behind the greenhouse one afternoon. She touched his arm. He didn't pull away. I smiled through my clenched teeth. I loved them both. One was my sister, one was my future. But when two people start looking at each other like you're the one interrupting, it's already too late. One rainy evening, I found her sketch pad on the porch. She used to draw when she was restless. I flipped through the pages expecting portraits, abstracts. Instead, I found him, Julian, sleeping, reading, shirtless, smiling, and a page with a date scrawled in the corner, March 14th, the day I was in Boston visiting our aunt at the hospital. My hand shook. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I waited. I watched. The next night, Julian said he was going to the store. I waited 5 minutes, then followed him. He didn't drive to the store. He drove to the orchard just outside town, and there she was standing under a tree, red umbrella open like a signal. He kissed her like he hadn't kissed me in months, and I swear she looked straight at me through the trees, smiled knowingly. I left before they saw me. Didn't scream, I didn't cry. I went home, walked into the garden, stood in front of the roses, and began to dig, because something told me betrayal didn't start now, it started then, a long time ago. And whatever Eloise planted here wasn't just flowers. I dug until my nails cracked through damp soil and thick roots, the scent of earth mixing with something older, forgotten. The shovel struck something soft, but not soil, not stone. I dropped to my knees, brushing dirt away with trembling fingers. A wooden box buried beneath the rose bush Eloise had planted weeks earlier. Inside, a crumpled photo of Julian and Eloise, not recent, older, dated a year before I even met him. He wasn't a stranger who wandered into that bookstore. He was her ex, maybe more than that. The second item? A necklace, my mother's, a gold chain with a small locket. It had been missing since her funeral. She'd promised it to me. Eloise had taken it, buried it in the last item, a page from a diary, torn, damp, but readable, my mother's handwriting. Eloise never loved like other girls. She breaks people and then asks why they're bleeding. I fear for whoever loves her next. My heart punched through my ribs. The woman I called sister, the man I planned to marry, they'd been weaving this lie together long before I even saw it coming. And worst of all, my mother had seen it, had warned me silently from beneath the roots she once tended. I put everything back in the box, not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed proof, a reminder this wasn't about a stolen love anymore. It was a game one they'd been playing. While I smiled and called it fate, so I decided to play back. I started with Julian. The next morning I told him I wanted to elope. No more big wedding, no more plans. Let's go away, I said, just us. His eyes twitched. But your sister's here, I smiled. Exactly. He hesitated but agreed. He thought he was winning later that evening. I left a note in Eloise's sketchpad. He's mine, he always has been, stop trying. I knew it would enrage her. I knew she'd come unglued, and she did that night. I heard her leave the house. I followed again, but this time she didn't go. To Julian she went to the old greenhouse, our childhood hideout. She didn't know I was already inside, hidden behind the rusted shelves. She paced, cried, then pulled out her phone. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. She knows something. She's acting strange. What if she tells someone? Pause. I don't care if you say you love her. You're mine. You always have been. That was the moment she said it aloud. I stepped out. She froze. Phone slipped from her hand. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I buried that garden with love, I said, and you turned it into your grave. She lunged at me, hysterical. Claws out, teeth bared like an animal cornered. We struggled, screamed in silence. I pushed her back. She hit her head on the glass frame of the greenhouse door. Blood bloomed across her temple. She fell still, breathing but silent. I stood over her for a long time. Then I picked up her phone. The last number she called? Julian, of course. I dialed. I've answered in a whisper. Is it done? I didn't say a word. He repeated. Is it done, Elle? Then I spoke. She's not the one who's done. He hung up. I smiled because now I had everything. Julian didn't come home that night. He knew I had hurt him. He knew the illusion had shattered, but what he didn't know was that Eloise was alive, barely bruised, half-conscious, lying in her old childhood bedroom, the one with the cracked ceiling and the forgotten wallpaper filled with wildflowers. I dragged her there after she fell, not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wanted her to wake up to the wreckage she made while she slept off her rage and guilt. I started rewriting the story, my story. I went into Julian's things, the journal he kept locked in his writing desk. I knew the passcode. It was my birthday, not because he loved me, but because he thought I never guessed something so obvious. He underestimated me, like they both did. Inside that journal were pieces of their truth, Julian's guilt, his plans with Eloise, letters she had written to him from Europe years before she returned, lines like, she won't question it. Nora always wanted to be loved more than she wanted to be right. When we have it all, I'll make it up to you. We'll turn her garden into ours. I nearly vomited. They were never trying to steal me away from him. They used me as the bridge. Eloise came back, not to reconnect, but to reclaim. Julian was never mine. He was on loan, a smirking snake curled between our ribs, feeding us both lies. And I had been the stupid little sister playing house in a garden built over rotting bones. I scanned every page, photographed everything. Then I went to my mother's closet. Her old cedar chest still held the documents. Property deeds, insurance claims, sealed letters, including one addressed to me, written years ago and never delivered. If Eloise returns, be careful. I love her, but she's dangerous when she wants something. Julian isn't who he says he is. I met him before you did. He lied to you both. I dropped the letter. He had lied to us both. Not once, not twice, but for years. I stood in front of the garden that morning, staring at the place where everything began. The red roses had wilted overnight, drooping like exhausted secrets, and I knew what I had to do. I invited Julian to the garden that evening, told him I wanted to talk. He came, Armani jacket, leather shoes, hair slicked back like he hadn't slept. Where is she? He asked. I smiled, inside sleeping it off. His shoulders relaxed. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he muttered. You weren't supposed to know. I tilted my head. Know what? He looked down. That I loved you both. I laughed so hard I cried. He didn't understand why. You loved me like a mirror, Julian, and her like a trophy, but you never chose either of us. You just waited for one to collapse. He tried to explain, but I held up his journal. Your words, not mine. He lunged for it. He stepped back. I've already sent it, I said. The letters, the messages, your plans, Eloise's threats, everything. To the publisher who dropped you last year for plagiarism. He froze. I wasn't done. I also sent it to her ex-husband, the one in Paris. Remember him? The one she never officially divorced? His eyes widened. She never told you that, did she? I smiled. Guess what that makes you? An accessory. He charged at me. Mistake. Eloise walked out onto the porch at that very moment, bandage on her head, weak but watching. He stopped mid-step. She stared at me. What did you do? She asked, voice hollow. I gave you both what you wanted, I said. Each other. Then I turned, walked into the house, and locked the door behind me. Let them sit in that garden with their lies, their secrets, their games. It was never mine anymore. It was theirs. I left the next morning, gave the house to charity, sold the rest, changed My name started over, but before I left I returned to my mother's grave placed. The locket the one Eloise stole on her tombstone. I finally pulled the weeds, I whispered. They won't grow here anymore. And I meant I never intended to return to Lorne Hill, but endings have a strange way of twisting into beginnings, and even the most broken soil remembers the hands that once nurtured it. A year passed. I lived in another town under another name. I taught poetry at a small liberal arts college. I planted tulips in a new garden, simple, yellow, honest. But even with peace blooming around me, I could still feel the roots of that old place tugging beneath my skin, not because I missed them, but because something was unfinished. The final twist came in the form of an envelope, no return address, just my name, Nora Elridge, written in thick black ink. Inside was a photograph. The garden, our garden, overgrown, abandoned, the red roses dead. And on the back, scribbled in familiar handwriting, "The house is being sold. Thought you should know, Eloise." I hadn't heard from her since I walked away from her, and Julian left them in their poison after everything I sent to his publisher and her ex-husband. Their lives unraveled faster than I expected. Julian's career collapsed. Articles spread like wildfire. Author accused of manipulating sisters for memoir plot. Eloise exposed as a co-conspirator lost her credibility in the art world. Her Paris gallery dropped her, her visa revoked. They vanished from headlines and from my life until now. I should have burned the letter. Instead, I went back one last time. The farmhouse stood like a skeleton of what it once was. Shutters, crooked paint, chipped weeds overtaking the porch. The once pristine white looked gray in the overcast light. I stepped inside expecting ghosts, but found silence. I wandered room to room. The living room where Julian once kissed my forehead and whispered forever. The kitchen where Eloise taught me to make lemon cake. The summer we were 12, all still, all dust. Then I reached the garden. It looked wild now, feral, the soil cracked. Red roses, long dead, brown and curled like forgotten tongues. But the locket I left on Mom's grave, still there. That's when I saw her, Eloise, sitting on the garden bench in a black coat, her hair longer now, but her face tired. She didn't look surprised to see me. "I knew you'd come," she said. I didn't respond. She stared at the ground. "They called it the Garden of Lies. You know, when the story broke, the press, the neighbors, they loved the drama." I stayed quiet. She looked up at me. "I didn't write the letter to drag you back. I didn't want them to tear it down before you saw it one last time." I almost believed her. Almost. Then she said something I never expected. "He never loved me either." I blinked. "He said he did," she continued. "But it was always you, Nora. He followed me to hurt you, to get closer to you. I realized that too late, and I think deep down I didn't care as long as someone wanted me." Her voice cracked, and for the first time since this began, she looked like my sister again. Not the snake in silk, not the thief in my garden, but the girl who used to braid my hair and sing sad songs under the stars. I sat beside her. We didn't speak for a while. Only the wind moved. Finally she said, "Why didn't you destroy us completely?" I looked at the roses, dead but still rooted. "Because I didn't want to be like you," I said. She nodded. We left it at that. I didn't stay long that night. I slept in a motel at the edge of town, wrote my final entry in the journal I kept through it all. Closure doesn't come with confrontation. It comes when the pain no longer lives in you. The garden is dead, but I'm still blooming. The next morning I left for good. I sold the land, anonymously donating the proceeds to a domestic abuse shelter. I changed my number again, and Eloise, she disappeared. No one knows where she went. But sometimes when I plant new flowers, I think of her, of what could have been, and I whisper a quiet prayer into the petals. May we both grow where we're finally free, because in the end I realized something powerful. The garden was always hers, but the roots, they were mine. Thanks for staying until the end. If you've ever been betrayed by those closest to you, know this. Healing is the loudest revenge. Please like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that uncover the shadows beneath the surface. This story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries.